Listen to the reading for today. Ernest Holmes in Thoughts Are Things on page 95 wrote, "You live because life lives in you. You move because there is a universal energy flowing through you. You think because there is an infinite intelligence thinking through you. You exist because the divine spirit has sought to individualize itself in and as you. This is why you are called the temple of the living God. There is a divine spark at the center of your being, but you need to recognize this, believe it, and act upon your belief." Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic, Creative Living Beyond Fear, wrote about the divine spark, our inherent creative nature, in this way. Inspiration likes working with us because we are possessed of something special, something unnecessarily rich, an overabundance that is magical. That is our inherent creativity, humming and stirring quietly in its deep reserve. If you are alive, you are a creative person. So I invite you to join me in the creative process by wholeheartedly saying the affirmation on the screen and also on your program. Today, I believe in the magic of spirit. I allow the magic of spirit to flow through me and as me, creating a life filled with magical moments.
So, the ultimate wizard, the divine, the source, the one creator of all that exists. And what wizardry this presence creates. I mean, think about not only this planet with all of its life in all of its various forms, from insects to humans to even just all the different kinds of minerals and plants. It is just astounding. And then to think that there are many, 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 many other planets and suns and galaxies, and that this is ever expanding and ever expanding and ever expanding. Scientists themselves, when they calculate it, say that this universe is infinite. And yet we hear there are multiverses. There are other universes with billions and billions of stars and planets. To me, that is the ultimate of wizardry, this great universal presence, the ultimate of big magic. And when I think of the magicians and the big magic, the way in which we humans express that or speak about that, what we are doing is we are tuning into what is true in essence about each one of us. Each one of us, as creations of the One, as children of the Most High, contain within us infinite reservoirs of possibility and potential. We have wizardry, spiritual wizardry, in our blood and in our very essence. Think about it. And yet, as that that Marianne Williamson reading says so amazingly, we tend to have a fear of that. And so there's a tendency to play small. And we trick ourselves into thinking that we're really afraid of our greatness. Or we're really afraid actually of stepping beyond who we are and thinking that we don't even have greatness. We even have fooled ourselves into that. So it is in standing in our own divinity, our own spiritual wizardry, the creativity that is inherent in our own being, that things really begin to change. It all begins there, in understanding the allness, the great creator itself, and understanding that we are children of that presence. And then when we go forth into the world with that in our minds and in our awarenesses, all things are possible. All things, whatever comes up. And what I love about the work called Big Magic, Creativity Beyond Fear, or Creative Living Beyond Fear, by Elizabeth Gilbert, is that she looks at that creative process through the eyes of a writer, someone who has dedicated her life to writing, and shares what she's learned about the creative process. And I have to say, I've been really fascinated with some of the things I've learned. A lot of it is what we talk about here every Sunday, but there were some additional little tidbits there, sparks, that just got me to thinking in kind of a different way about this beautiful thing called creativity and who we are in truth. And one of the things that she says, and really Ernest Holmes says it in a very similar way, she talks about the idea that ideas, all infinite potentials of ideas, are floating around, waiting for a receptive human to catch it, say yes to it, and begin to collaborate with those ideas. And so then once we say yes, and actually we can either say yes or no. I'm doing a little review of the previous weeks too, by the way. When we can say yes or no to the idea when it shows up. And if it's an idea that's for us, guess what? It feels like falling in love. We get the God bumps, and we get the hairs standing on the back of the neck, and we get the butterflies in our stomachs, and there's this excitement and fear kind of all at the same time going on with these new ideas, these inspiring ideas. And so she uses the word enchantment, that we can become very enchanted by these ideas. And so when we say yes and we start making a commitment, then we move forward. But we can also say no if we feel like the timing's not right for it, or if it's just not for us. And guess what? But she said the way to do it when you say no is to actually have a conversation with the idea, because she sees them as living things. Ernest Holmes has a book called Thoughts Are Things. And she said to have a conversation with the idea and say, you are a great idea, but it's not for me right now. No, thank you. However, how about if you try so-and-so? Or try another human, and see what happens. So in other words, you respect the idea and send it on its way with love. And then when you do have an idea and you begin to dance with an idea, to realize that it's a dance, it's a collaborative thing, which I think is really lovely. And this is something that's worked for her. Ernest Holmes talks about the idea of that there's a broadcast going on. That's the term that he uses. There's a broadcast going on in the universe. All kinds of infinite potential and ideas are just flying around, and so when we open ourselves and listen deeply, we can catch those ideas, and then they become something that we can then move forward with. So his is very similar. And we have something called the visioning process that we use, an actual cultivated practice of catching ideas by going into deep meditation. This is not visualization, by the way. This is a meditative process where we ask really rich questions like, what is the highest idea of my life? And we sit in the silence and we listen. Excuse me. And in the process of partnering with these ideas, it calls us into higher levels of consciousness. Do you realize that's what is really going on here? In the process of creativity and stepping into ideas that are outside our comfort zone, we are actually inviting ourselves, we're being pulled into higher states of consciousness. And the creative process, the evolution of consciousness work hand in hand. It's beautiful how that works. So I wanted to share with you an example in her book of how she has proven to herself that ideas have consciousness, and that we can partner with them or not, and what happens. So Elizabeth Gilbert, by the way, she's the author of Eat, Pray, and Love. Many of you have maybe even seen the movie or read the book. She said that she had was inspired to write a book on the Amazon jungle based on an inspiration that she received from talking with her fiance at that time. His name was Felipe. He was from Brazil, and he talked about in the 1960s how they were going to build a huge highway through the Amazon. They were just going to cut right through the Amazon and build this amazing highway. And I don't know how many of you know what happened, but all of these international companies started investing a whole lot of money in it, as well as Brazil. And they started building it, had this huge equipment and everything. They were in the midst of the jungle, and then the rainy season hit. And it rained and it rained and it rained and it rained and it rained, and pretty soon everything was covered in water, and they had to leave. And when they finally came back, the jungle had eaten everything up. It was like the equipment and everything was gone. They couldn't even find it. So they let go of that idea, but meanwhile, people lost a lot of money. So she decided to write a book about a middle-aged woman who was in love with her boss, who was married. And when all this happened, his son decided to talk them into investing, and the son went over there with the money, and then when all this stuff happened, he went missing. And so the boss didn't go over there himself. He sent his assistant over, this middle-aged woman. So she, in the name of love, she went over. So this is the way that the story was supposed to go. Well, in the meantime, after spending about 2 years on this manuscript, she had difficulty in her own relationship, because when Felipe was on the way back from Brazil, he was detained at the border, accused of something, thrown in jail, and then told that he could never return to the U.S. again. This was her love. This was the love of her life. So she left, and in the meantime got married, and to make a long story short, she wrote a book on that and neglected the other one, the Amazon jungle one, for 2 years. When she went back to retrieve that manuscript, which she had locked away, all of the inspiration was gone. She tried, but it was gone. And then shortly after that, she met another author at some sort of event. The other author became a very good friend of hers. Within a very short period of time, without even sharing anything about this Amazon manuscript, this friend wrote this book about the Amazon jungle, a middle-aged woman who was in love with her boss, blah, 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 blah. Now, the circumstances were a little bit different because it was contemporary and had to do with the pharmaceutical company. But the essence of the idea was there. See the God bumps? She said that proved to her once and for all that ideas have life to them. And of course, when you think about it, we share this one universal mind. We live, move, and have our being within the universal mind of God, the presence and the mind of God. And so we share this mind, and sometimes we fool ourselves into thinking that we're completely separate from each other, have these walls around each other, but we are broadcasting systems as well. So I just thought that was such a fascinating story. I wanted to share that with you. So this whole thing about ideas and partnering with ideas and collaborating with ideas, I just absolutely love it. It fascinates me. So the things that I wanted to talk about today were what happens after we say yes to an idea. What happens next? And and one of the things so I'm going to be actually talking about 2 concepts today: permission and persistence. So here's what can often happen when we decide to say yes to a calling, to an inspirational idea. And that is that, we make a commitment to see the idea all the way through. I mean, that's really the way to do it, if you really want to partner with it. And the thing that can get in the way is a belief, and it can be very and deep in the subconscious, the idea that we need somebody's permission to do this. Okay, and this is where it can come from. And it's not only just the family of origin, it's a cultural thing. But if you were brought up in a family that was terrified of taking risks, of getting outside their comfort zones, then that could be buried in your subconscious. And so you feel that you can't, that you would somehow dishonor your family if you did something way out of the ordinary from what the family normally does. So subconsciously you'd feel like you'd need their permission, or you don't have their permission. Another one is if you came from a family that worried a lot about what will the neighbors think. I had that kind of a family. It was my mother's famous line, what will the neighbors think? If you're worried about what other people think, and you've been taught to worry about what other people think, it really gets in the way of living in inspiration and stepping outside your comfort zone. So what do we do about that? Okay, so now that we've identified it, that's always the question I have. So this is what you do, is you become aware that you are the only power in your life. Or God is the only power in your life, but you are that center of divine operation in your life, and spirit, that source of all that is right there in the midst of you. The one and only power. When we ask for someone else's permission to be all that we can be, we are giving away our power. We're letting somebody else play God in our life. So when we receive an inspiration, we get those feelings of falling in love. That is permission in and of itself. So the way to begin is to give ourselves permission. Take back the power and be the ones who give ourselves permission. That may feel a little scary, and I understand that. That's part of the package of creativity, is fear, because it means stepping outside the comfort zone. So it's about letting go of what other people think, letting go of what other people think, letting go of what other people think over and over and over again. So I'd like you to listen to this. Here's an affirmation that I came up with, and I'd like you to consider it, and then we'll say it together, okay? So listen to this. I give myself permission to live a creative life with no end in mind other than to experience joy and fulfillment and create big magic. Now notice it says with no end in mind. What does that mean? That means it's not about the fame, the success, the money, impressing somebody. It's none of that. What she made very clear is it's about doing it for the love of it, because it calls your heart and you love, 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 love doing it and being it. Because if we do it for the other things, we can't control all that. We can't control what other people think, what their opinions are. We can't control what happens in the economy. That is beyond us. But if we immerse ourselves in doing what we love, that is something that will sustain us and keep us excited about life. And if you know the story about Elizabeth Gilbert, she was your typical writer who for years and years and years kept some sort of a daytime job, a whole myriad of different things, from waitressing to being a ranch hand and stuff like that. And she didn't give up her so-called day job until she knew that, until after Eat, Pray, Love became famous, and she actually had the streams of income so that she could write full time. And she's very big on that, is if you have a creative gift, don't try to jump right into doing that creative gift to be your income source until it's actually giving you the flow that you need to sustain your life. She's totally, she's like totally debunks that whole idea of the starving artist. She said it's just not necessary, and it also inhibits creativity if you put yourself in the position of being the starving artist and, make that your total thing, You agree, Jola, huh? Okay, so we don't need anyone's permission. Oh, so let's try this affirmation and let's see what happens. Or let's not try it. Let's do it. Let's claim it. Ready? I give myself permission. To live a creative life. With no end in mind. Other than to experience joy and fulfillment. And create big magic. And create really big magic. All right. So, along with this idea of giving permission, she talks about possessing fierce, creative entitlement. How about that one? And remember, this is not just for people who are artists and musicians. This is all of us. We're all creative beings. We all have our own brand of creativity. Everybody gets that, right? Whoever we are. It can show up in many, many, many different ways. So here's what fierce, creative entitlement looks like. I am allowed to have a voice and a vision of my own. Just repeat after me. I'm allowed to have a voice and a vision of my own. So creative entitlement doesn't mean acting like the world owes you anything whatsoever. It's not about the world owing you something. It is about knowing that you have a voice and a vision of your own. And without creative entitlement, without knowing that that is your birthright, she says you will never push yourself out of the suffocating insulation of personal safety and into the frontiers of the beautiful and the unexpected. Because remember, fear is boring. It keeps us stuck in our smallness, right? So, she's really big on not fighting the fear, but giving it a seat, but not allowing it to have a driver's seat, right? Okay. And then here's what happens as we continue to partner with ideas that inspire us and appreciate them and appreciate our work, the work that we have here and now. Live in appreciation. We attract more ideas and more inspiration, which means more support from the universe. Okay. Persistence. So last Sunday, I told kind of a longer story, and I'm not going to tell the whole story again, of the big magic that's taken place in our spiritual center, particularly in our first 2 years, and how it came about because we were enchanted with the idea of spiritual community based on unconditional love and empowering and liberating spiritual teachings that we teach here. And we were enchanted with the idea of having our own spiritual home, which is where we are right now. And we understood that in order for that to manifest, it meant that we were to do the deep inner work. And actually, we know the deep inner work is all about subtracting all the stuff that doesn't belong, all the fear, the doubt, the misconceptions of who we are. It's about letting all of that go. Growth, spiritual growth, truly is 100% subtraction. Does everybody get that? It's about releasing all that baggage that we carry around. So we began to move our feet. We did our inner work, and then we also, created services, and we still continue to do that. Classes, workshops. We looked for the building. We raised funds for it, and we persisted no matter how things looked to the physical eye or how our feelings were. So that's one of the things about persistence. Persistence is about moving through the emotional cycles that almost inevitably happen every time we step out of our comfort zone. Elizabeth Gilbert gives examples. She says emotional cycles go with creativity. And she said she can actually, when she starts a new project, she can actually watch how it unfolds in her own mind. She said, oh, this is the part where I think I should never have gotten into this project. Oh, this is the part where I think I will never write a good sentence again. Oh, this is the part where I call myself a lazy loser. Oh, and this is the part where I get all involved in, even if I do publish, what will the critics say? Anybody recognize that kind of stuff that goes on? See, the thing that's important is to understand that this is part of our humanity. But we have a divinity that can be the observer of it and make another choice. Yes? All right. That's what it's all about. Persistence also means persisting through disagreeable parts of our work, our life, or our project. It means persisting anyway. And it also means persisting despite the rejection and the criticism of others. Not letting that stop us in our tracks. I love what Terry Cole Whitaker says about that. She says, what you think of me is none of my business. I can't do anything about it anyway, and you have a right to your opinion, right? So I'd like to tell a little story about this. Some of you have heard this before. I told it quite some time ago, but this is a story about a farmer and a mule. And one day, and this was an old mule, he was having some challenges and stuff, and one day the mule lost his balance and fell into a well. And just called out, it was to the farmer. The farmer finally noticed what had happened and then thought about it and made a decision to just call all of his neighbors together and to just bury the mule. He figured that was the merciful thing to do because he figured maybe the legs were broken or whatever. So they gathered together and they started throwing the dirt in, and oh my gosh, then the mule became hysterical. But then suddenly an idea came to the mule, and it was shake it off and step up. Shake it off and step up. So with every blow that came, every time the dirt came down and hit him, shake it off and step up. So as you can see, over time, the mule eventually got to the top, stepped over the wall. What a beautiful metaphor for persistence. Shake it off, shake off the blows of life, whatever they are, and step up. Shake it off and step up. Is that just a beautiful metaphor for persistence as well, too? I love that story because it's just such a great reminder. So in Big Magic, she writes, Elizabeth Gilbert writes, so you must keep calling out for your own big magic tirelessly and faithfully, being open to experience that divine collision of creative communion. Because when it all comes together, it's amazing. The only thing you can do is bow down in gratitude, as if you have been granted an audience with the divine, because you have. So let's, everybody stand up. We're going to really put ourselves into this one. I'm going to invite everybody just to put your whole heart into this affirmation because we're going to claim this for ourselves and raise your hands. This is all NLP stuff. We're opening our arms to the universe, looking up, shoulders back and down. Okay, we ready? I am a child of God.
I am a child of God.
I am designed to be creative.
I am designed to be creative.
I give myself permission to be curious, to explore, to create with no end in mind other than to bring joy and fulfillment. I shake off doubt. I shake off fear. I shake off uncertainty. I shake off the past. I step up and move persistently in the direction of my dreams to create big magic. I expect the best. I let go and I let God. And so it is. Yes. Woo!
Wow, thank you for that. Awesome.
Oh, you're welcome.
Remind me what Alan Hoffman said, change your life, change your dreams.
Uh-huh.
Yes.